The crack of a rifle shattered the Arizona silence. Mason Calloway knelt beside the gray desert wolf, its blood seeping into the parched earth. The beast had taken two of his calves this month. A necessary kill, nothing more. He wiped sweat from his weathered brow, the merciless summer sun of 1882 beating down on his broad shoulders. That's when he saw it, a crimson trail in the sand leading beyond the ridge. Mason's hand instinctively moved to the Colt Army revolver on his hip. 42 years of hard living had taught him caution. The war had taught him vigilance. Following the blood trail with measured steps, his spurs jingling softly against the silence, he crested the ridge and froze. There, collapsed on the baked earth, lay a woman. Her frame was powerful, skin sun-darkened, black hair matted with sweat and dust. An Apache woman. In her arms, she clutched a small bundle. A whimpering infant. The dark stain spreading across her shoulder told him everything. Gunshot wound, recent. Mason's steel-gray eyes narrowed. He'd seen what Apache raiders could do to settlement towns, remembered the burning homesteads during the campaigns. Yet something held him there, the fierce protectiveness in how she held the child, even as life drained from her. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes black as coal. She spoke in broken English, each word strained. "I can protect you. Work, keep warm. Do not let us die." Before Mason could answer, a cloud of dust on the horizon caught his eye. Riders, moving fast, hunting, decision time. In one fluid motion, Mason gathered the woman and child onto his horse. Years in the Confederate cavalry had taught him how to cover tracks. He draped his duster over her, concealing her distinctive clothing, and then led his mount through the rocky passes where hoofprints wouldn't show. "Name?" he asked tersely as they rode. "Swift Arrow," she managed through clenched teeth. "Child is Little Moon." Mason nodded once. Names didn't matter much if they didn't survive the next hour. The Calloway Ranch sat on the outskirts of Silver Creek, a mining town that had sprung up like a weed when silver was discovered in the hills. It wasn't much. A sturdy log cabin with a stone chimney, a barn in need of fresh paint, a corral with a half-dozen horses, and grazing land that stretched toward the mountains. Drought had thinned his cattle herd by half this season. Mason carried Swift Arrow inside, setting her on the wooden table. The bullet had gone clean through her shoulder. Lucky. He'd seen enough battlefield wounds to know the ones that killed quick and the ones that lingered. This one might not be fatal if infection didn't set in. "Going to clean this," he said, reaching for whiskey and bandages. "Will hurt." She didn't flinch when the alcohol hit the wound, just drew a sharp breath and held it. The baby, Little Moon, slept peacefully in a makeshift crib of blankets. As Mason worked, Swift Arrow's eyes fixed on him with unnerving intensity. "Why they hunt you?" he asked, tightening the bandage. "Bounty, $500. Her voice was stronger now, with a musical lilt beneath the pain. "My husband, chief's son, discovered white man's plan. Mining man wants our sacred land. Has papers. False papers." Mason's hand stilled. $500. Enough to save his ranch from the bank. Enough to get through winter with feed for the cattle. "Husband fought. They killed him. Say I help. Say I murder, too." Swift Arrow closed her eyes, exhaustion claiming her. "Tribe believes I bring bad spirits now. Cannot return." Mason sat back, the weight of the situation settling on him like a yoke. Harboring a fugitive, an Apache fugitive with a bounty, was asking for trouble. The kind of trouble that ended with a noose or a bullet. Yet something in his gut told him there was truth in her words. Outside, the sun sank behind the mountains, painting the land in blood-red hues. Mason checked his ammunition and barred the door. Dawn broke over the ranch with golden fingers of light. Mason woke with a start, his hand reaching for his revolver before memory returned. The Apache woman. The empty table where she'd been lying sent him striding outside, hand on his gun. There he stopped, surprise rooting him to the spot. Swift Arrow stood by the cattle trough, her wounded arm bound tight against her body, the other working a rusted pump that hadn't yielded water in months. Yet somehow water flowed freely, filling the trough. Her movements were precise, efficient, betraying no pain, though Mason knew the wound must be agonizing. She looked up, meeting his gaze without flinching. I work, earn place, not charity. Mason approached slowly, examining the pump. How'd you fix this? Swift Arrow pointed to the base. Roots blocking flow. I clear. I know desert water signs. The baby cooed from a sling across her back, tiny hands reaching for the morning light. Despite himself, Mason felt the corner of his mouth tug upward. He'd forgotten the sound of a child's laughter. Sarah and their boy had been gone 5 years now, taken by fever while he was hunting down a stray bull. By the time he'd returned, he shook the memory away. Need to go to town, get supplies. His eyes narrowed. Don't run. No run, she replied steadily. Where would I go? Silver Creek bustled with the usual morning activity. Miners heading to the hills, merchants opening shops, working girls finally seeking their beds after a long night. Mason tied his horse outside the general store, hat pulled low. Sheriff Blackwood spotted him immediately. The lawman wore his Union Army background like a second badge, never letting Mason forget which side had lost the war. Calloway, he acknowledged coolly, thought you'd be too broke to shop in town these days. Mason ignored the bait. Just supplies, Sheriff. Heard there was gunfire out by your place yesterday. Mason met his gaze evenly. Wolf, taking my calves. Blackwood nodded slowly, disbelief evident. Keep your nose clean, Reb. Times are changing. As the sheriff walked away, Mason caught sight of a poster tacked to the wall of the jailhouse. His blood ran cold. Wanted Apache woman, accomplice to murder, 500 reward returned to Victor Hargrove, Silver Creek Mining Company. The crude drawing bore a passable resemblance to Swift Arrow. Mason tore it down, crumpling it into his pocket. As he turned, he nearly collided with a broad-chested man in an expensive suit. Victor Hargrove himself, owner of the largest silver mine in the territory. Mr. Calloway, isn't it? Hargrove's smile didn't reach his eyes. I understand you're having a difficult season. Perhaps we could discuss your land. The Silver Creek Mining Company pays generously. Not selling, Mason replied flatly. Hargrove's smile tightened. Everyone has their price, Mr. Calloway. Even a stubborn former rebel like yourself. As Mason turned to leave, Hargrove added, by the way, if you happen to see any unusual activity around these parts, there's good money and information. That Apache savage killed my brother. Family means everything, doesn't it? Mason felt his jaw tighten, but kept his expression neutral. Sorry for your loss. On his way out of town, Mason spotted a familiar figure behind the livery. Tucker, a former slave who'd fought for the Union. Despite their different sides in the war, they'd formed an unlikely friendship built on mutual respect and a shared skill with horses. Mason, Tucker nodded, his voice low. Heard you might be in some trouble. What makes you say that? Tucker glanced around before answering. Hargrove's men were asking about you, saying you might be harboring a fugitive. Mason's expression remained impassive. Is that so? There's more, Tucker continued. That Apache woman, she's not wanted for what they claim. Hargrove's brother was trying to force her husband to sign away tribal lands. When he refused, Tucker drew a finger across his throat. She witnessed it all. Mason processed this information silently, pieces falling into place. Watch your back, Tucker warned. Hargrove owns half this town, including the sheriff. When Mason returned to the ranch, he found Swift Arrow had repaired a section of broken fence and was skinning a rabbit. She'd done more work with one good arm than most men accomplished with two. As night fell, they sat before the fire, the baby sleeping peacefully nearby. For the first time, Swift Arrow spoke at length, her English improving with each sentence. My husband was peace speaker for our tribe. He negotiated with white government. Her eyes reflected the dancing flames. Hargrove came with papers, said our land now belongs to mining company, said government ordered it. She paused, lost in memory. Husband knew papers were false, confronted Hargrove's brother at trading post. They argued. Hargrove's brother drew gun first. My husband faster. She looked up at Mason. Fair fight, but then more white men came. Shot him many times. I escaped with proof. What proof? Mason asked, leaning forward. Real papers. Government treaty protecting our land. And maps showing silver deposits Hargrove wants, hidden in sacred cave. She studied Mason's face. You were soldier, fighting man. You understand honor. Mason stared into the fire. Been a long time since anyone accused me of having honor, Swift Arrow. You saved us. Could have taken bounty. Chose life instead. Her dark eyes met his. That is honor. A sudden crack outside silenced them both. Mason was on his feet in an instant, Colt drawn. Swift Arrow moved to the baby, her own knife appearing in her hand. 3 men, she whispered, her Apache senses detecting what Mason couldn't yet see. Coming from west. Mason nodded, extinguishing the lamp. They'd rehearsed this possibility. He positioned himself by the window, Swift Arrow behind the heavy oak cabinet, Little Moon hidden beneath the floorboards in a space once used by the Underground Railroad. The attack came swift and vicious. 3 bounty hunters, armed and determined. Gunfire erupted, shattering the night. Mason dropped the first man with a clean shot to the chest. The second crashed through the door, only to meet Swift Arrow's throwing knife with deadly accuracy. The third man fired wildly, a bullet grazing Mason's arm. Grimacing through the pain, Mason returned fire. The bounty hunter fell, wounded but alive. In the aftermath, Mason bound the survivor to a chair. Blood dripped from Mason's sleeve, but he ignored it. Who sent you? He demanded, pressing his gun barrel under the man's chin. Hargrove, the bounty hunter stammered. Said double the bounty if we brought her in tonight. Why the rush? Don't know. Something about government inspectors coming tomorrow. Needed her gone. Swift Arrow's eyes widened. The Indian agent comes to verify treaties. Hargrove must show our land is abandoned to claim it. Mason exchanged a glance with Swift Arrow. Time had just run out. By dawn, they had a plan. Tucker arrived as promised, bringing extra ammunition and news from town. Hargrove had deputized several miners, claiming they were forming a posse to capture a dangerous murderer. You sure about this, Mason? Tucker asked, surveying their preparations. You're risking everything for her. Mason checked his rifle. Some things matter more than land, Tucker. They rode out under the cover of early morning mist. Mason, Swift Arrow, and Tucker, leaving Little Moon in the care of Tucker's wife. Their destination, the sacred caves where Swift Arrow's husband had hidden the documents. The journey took them deep into Apache territory. Swift Arrow led them through hidden passes, avoiding trails. Mason marveled at her knowledge of the land. Every plant, every rock formation told her something. Near midday, they encountered a small band of Apache hunters. Tension crackled like summer lightning as weapons were raised on both sides. Swift Arrow stepped forward, speaking rapidly in her native tongue. The Apache warriors regarded her with suspicion, then turned hostile eyes to Mason and Tucker. An older warrior stepped forward, his face a map of wrinkles and battle scars. He and Swift Arrow exchanged heated words. Finally, he nodded grimly. Elder Running Elk believes my story, she explained. Some think I still bring bad fortune, but they will help. Hargrove's men have been watching sacred caves. We cannot approach directly. Running Elk led them along a hidden path, steep and treacherous. As they neared the caves, Swift Arrow suddenly froze, raising her hand in warning. "Something wrong," she whispered. "Too quiet." Mason scanned the rocks above. The glint of sunlight on metal caught his eye a second before the shot rang out. "Ambush!" he yelled, pushing Swift Arrow to safety as bullets peppered the ground around them. In the chaos that followed, Mason fought with the precision of a veteran soldier. Swift Arrow moved like a phantom between the rocks, her knife finding its mark twice. Tucker provided covering fire from behind a boulder. Then Mason saw him, Hargrove himself, directing his men from a ridge above. As Mason raised his rifle, a searing pain exploded in his chest. Looking down, he saw crimson spreading across his shirt. The world tilted, ground rushing up to meet him. Through the haze of pain, he was aware of being dragged to shelter. Swift Arrow's face hovered above his, her expression fierce. She spoke urgent words he couldn't understand, pressing something to his wound. The bitter taste of herbs filled his mouth before darkness claimed him. Mason awoke to firelight and pain. Every breath felt like knives in his chest. Swift Arrow sat beside him, grinding herbs in a stone bowl. Her face was drawn with exhaustion, dark circles beneath her eyes. "How long?" he managed to croak. "One day, one night," she replied. "Bullet missed heart, Apache medicine strong." Mason tried to sit up, gasping at the pain. "Must rest," she insisted. "Hargrove thinks you dead. We have advantage now." Mason noticed the leather satchel beside her. "The papers?" Swift Arrow nodded. "Running Elk helped retrieve while you slept. Government papers, maps, all here." Her expression hardened. "Also found this." She held up a document, a forged deed of sale with crude imitations of Apache marks. "Hargrove returns to Silver Creek now to meet Indian agent with false papers. Says our tribe abandoned land, so now it belongs to mining company." Mason's mind raced through their options, each more desperate than the last. "Help me up," he finally said. "We're going to town." The saloon in Silver Creek fell silent as Mason Calloway pushed through the batwing doors. His appearance was shocking, pale as death, bandages visible beneath his torn shirt, but standing tall with his Colt strapped to his hip. Swift Arrow entered behind him, bow in hand, her face painted with traditional Apache markings. Tucker flanked them, shotgun ready. At the far table sat Victor Hargrove with Sheriff Blackwood and a man in an Eastern suit, the Indian agent. Hargrove's face drained of color. "Impossible," he whispered. "I saw you die." Mason's voice carried through the silent room. "You saw wrong." Sheriff Blackwood stood, hand moving to his gun. "Calloway, you're harboring a wanted criminal. Stand down or—" "She's not the criminal here, Sheriff." Mason tossed the authentic treaty onto the table. "These are the real government papers recognizing Apache ownership of those lands. And these," he added the forged documents, "are Hargrove's forgeries." The Indian agent picked up both sets, examining them with narrowed eyes. Hargrove's face contorted with rage. "You believe this Confederate trash over me? I built this town. And you killed my brother when he discovered your plan," Swift Arrow added, her voice unwavering. Hargrove lunged for his gun. Everything happened at once. The sheriff drawing on Mason, Hargrove aiming at Swift Arrow, miners and townspeople diving for cover. Mason fired first, his bullet striking the sheriff's hand. Swift Arrow's arrow pinned Hargrove's sleeve to the wooden beam behind him. In 3 strides, Mason crossed to Hargrove, pressing his Colt against the mine owner's temple. "Give me a reason," Mason growled. "One reason?" Hargrove's eyes bulged with fear and hatred. The room held its breath. After a long moment, Mason lowered his gun. "I don't need your blood. Frontier justice will decide your fate. The Indian agent cleared his throat. I believe I've seen enough to launch a full investigation, Mr. Hargrove. These documents appear to be legitimate federal treaties. He turned to Swift Arrow with a respectful nod. Madam, your people's claim to the land will be upheld. As Hargrove was taken into custody, the tension in the room slowly dissolved. People began to whisper, staring at the unlikely trio: a former Confederate soldier, an Apache woman, and a black freedman standing united. 3 months later, the Callaway Ranch had transformed. New fencing encircled expanded grazing lands. The barn stood freshly painted. A small herd of horses, payment from the government for Swift Arrow's testimony, grazed in the autumn sunlight. On the porch, Mason sat cleaning his rifle, watching as Swift Arrow practiced with the Colt he'd given her. Her skill with the weapon had grown impressive. In return, she taught him Apache hunting techniques that had doubled his success. Little Moon toddled between them, her delighted laughter bringing smiles to both their faces. They weren't husband and wife, not in the traditional sense. Theirs was a different bond, forged in blood and fire, mutual respect, shared purpose, the understanding that came from two souls who had seen too much death and chosen life instead. In the distance, dust signaled riders approaching, Tucker returning from town with supplies and news. Hargrove's being sent east for trial, he reported, dismounting. But there's talk of a gang moving this way from Texas. Cattle rustlers. Mason and Swift Arrow exchanged a glance, a silent communication born of their trials together. Let them come, Mason said, rising to his feet. They stood side by side on the hill overlooking their land. Not just property now, but something more. A sanctuary, a beginning. This is not just land, Mason said, his voice carrying on the wind. This is legacy. This is honor. And we'll defend it to the end. Swift Arrow nodded, Little Moon secure in her arms. The setting sun cast long shadows across the valley, promising another day, another fight, another chance to build something worth protecting. In the Wild West, a man was measured not by his past, but by his actions. A woman by her strength and courage. Together, they had found something rare in this harsh territory. Not just survival, but a reason to live.